Good morning. It's 6:32 a.m. It is January 3rd, Saturday morning, and I am up. I've been up for about 2 hours already, and so I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I have looked at some. I haven't watched any videos this morning, but I just kind of glanced at some, like scrolling down YouTube to see if anything would be of interest. I don't really feel like watching anything. I did see one not email, sorry, a video that was worded or titled, like, people are wondering if anyone ever told me about any of this, what was going on as far as me being monitored or gang stalked, and the answer is no. I figured it all out on my own. When I left Murray Family Farms, I started realizing, like I said, because I signed the confidentiality contract, I didn't expect any of what happened at Murray Family Farms to continue. And so when I realized that it was okay, this is when I started making my channel in September of 2015, because I realized I was dealing with a form of retaliation, right? Because I was upset at Murray Family Farms, and I had brought this up to Steve Murray about people talking about my hair, people, comparing me against Selena. Selena was a subordinate of mine, and she was biracial, and they were basically creating a little race war at Murray Family Farms, and I thought that was unnecessary. So I went to Steve Murray and asked him, let him know I knew it was going on so that it would stop, right? And this was continually going on. I said, I do not want people making comments about my hair. Leave me alone. And so the issues continue to happen. I was constantly being bombarded with harassment, and so I ended up leaving the company, right? Because Steve Murray, he knew they were guilty. They knew they were, right? So they ended up making me leave the company when in fact I should have been protected. But anyway, I left Murray Family Farms, and from that point on, it had been one situation after another, one strange, suspicious issue after another. I would say Flourishing Art was the most obvious one, where I was being, outright, directly bullied in that company. And so that was where I realized that, okay, definitely this is some sort of retaliation from Murray Family Farm. So, no one told me anything. I also remember when in 2014, when I went back to my mom's house, okay, I was staying with her until I would say March maybe of 2015, and then I came back to Bakersfield. There was a lot of suspicious things that were going on when it came to, for example, Lisa. Lisa called me, and she was faking crying, and she sounded very demented. Like she was like, "Oh, I'm so worried about you," and blah blah blah. She was like, it was almost like she was having fun. It was very twisted, very disturbing. And this is when I came to realize that my sister was manipulating my employment, and it started to disturb me. And so I realized, okay, I realized I didn't feel safe. Like I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go. I now realize, okay, I ended up going back to Joel, right? And now I realize that Joel was a part of the operation. See, how I figured all of this out is I understood what gang stalking was, okay? And I understood what human trafficking was. I understood the tactics. Some people did not put them into the same category. I look at um, and they are and they aren't. Okay, let me explain. Like in human trafficking, people use the same tactics as they do in gang stalking. They have little secrets among employers, secrets among landlords, secrets of why? Because they want to gain control over this specific target, right? So I understood all of that. I understood that in these sort of situations, everybody that is going to be a part of it, all of it. Okay, so that means kids you knew in like kindergarten, it doesn't matter. The thing is that this is probably some sort of, depending on how deep and heavy it was. And now I come to realize that this was actually the CIA level. Okay, CIA level. And see what this is based on, like I said. because me coming here to Bakersfield, I didn't do anything wrong, okay? Dressing nice in clothes is not a criminal offense, okay? It is not a criminal offense. None of the things that people were monitoring me for were criminal offenses, okay? But they might be considered controversial towards people's religion, okay? And specifically when it comes to men and women being married and how women are expected to live and so forth under the guide of religion. I am not of a religion. So I'm walking around Bakersfield knowing that I'm innocent, holding my head up high, and all of the accusations are based on people's religious assumptions and a combination of people coming from different backgrounds, okay? So nobody told me anything. I figured it out myself, okay? And then when it comes to, like, for example, I live in the same house with Houston, right? We and I never talk about it. When I did mention it, like, there's been times where I've mentioned things like, I don't trust this community, or, I've let my son know that I was gang stalked. This is a conversation that we had in 2020 or 2020. I think it was 2020, okay? And I remember him like dismissing it, rolling his eyes, saying, well, you act like there's some sort of cabal against you or something. And I kept thinking, yes, there is. See, now I believe that my son knows more than what he tells me. I do believe that he does, but I do believe that for whatever reason he has been prevented from doing this, maybe because he had been affiliated with these particular religious groups who wanted him to vow secrecy, or maybe he felt guilty because he was involved because of the Collins told him to be quiet or whatever. So I don't push the issue, okay? But see, I understand that this is the sort of tactics that these people use, okay? So, and I also understand that when it comes to higher level brainwashing operations, that these people make Manchurian candidates out of the average citizen. Okay, and what I mean by that, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Manchurian Candidate. The original version had Frank Sinatra. Okay, Frank Sinatra played in the original version, and then I know a few years ago they made a newer, updated version where we had Denzel Washington playing in that movie. Okay, so my point is that there are certain ways that you can program the mind to receive certain triggers. Okay, like in the movie, every time they brought out a deck of cards, somehow or another his mind was programmed to shift modes. Okay, shift in a different direction. So I understood that these sort of mind control programs have been going on for a very long time. And I understand it's mind control programs is what fuels these things, okay? And I had, like I said, CB Berganza, I am a continuation of CB Berganza. So everything that I dealt with as CB Berganza, okay? And when I went to my grave, my so-called grave, okay, when I died at CB Berganza, none of those memories, they are still there, but they're suppressed, okay? So they don't come out in full picture, but they might formulate in your personal interest. It might formulate in the things that you take interest in reading. Like, I was a Nazi fanatic, it seems like, at the age of 5 and 6. You know what I mean? I wanted to know everything about Nazis. I was interested in Hitler. I was interested in, religion. I was interested in spirituality. I was interested in God. I was interested in the paranormal. Okay. Why? Because this is just a continuation of who I was. Okay. And so, this is one of the reasons why I took interest in things like the Bible or whatever. Because I now understand that throughout my incarnations, this whole religious, what do you call it, song and dance that, I've had, right, throughout the ages. So now I come to realize, okay, my bloodline goes down to like King Solomon and all these other people. So it's like, I get it, okay? But I am not here to create these problems. I am not the one who creates dirt on the earth. I am here to be a peaceful person 100%. I am here to be a peaceful person 100%. And I do believe in, I do understand that these sort of mind control programs have affected the way that people think and the way that they talk and and yes, their way that they talk. Even their language is in a lot of ways confused, mixed up, and prevents people from feeling good or functioning properly. I will tell you, these programs are deep. Okay, and so I now understand that this was orchestrated by, now here's this, okay, by employers. Lisa Hughes. Okay, Lisa was in touch with employers here, whether that be Alita, whether that be Selena Bruce, maybe whoever. Now, mind you, when it comes to people like Selena Bruce as well as Mary Landucci, these people were not business owners, okay, but they were acting on behalf of the company. Who is solely responsible would be people who are business owners, and also people who had positions and titles like CEOs and managers. Why? Because these are representations of the company. Okay. And yeah, it is. They should be somebody who gets held accountable for what they do. Okay. So I understand that Steve Murray was responsible for some of this. Okay. But I also have to look at these people who are somewhat irrelevant in this issue. Like, for example, even though the Collins played an integral role in my targeting, they are basically references. They are not a part of the agreement that I signed with Steve Murray. When I signed my application, when I signed my new hire paperwork, whatever that might be, okay? None of that had their name on it. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, Steve Murray, I will say that his part, he may have informed employers to blacklist me. He may have been the one, or it could have been the Collins or whatever, okay? But at the same point, whatever the case is, it is the employers who are held responsible, mainly because they actively participated in gang stalking as well as human trafficking. Nobody told me anything. Okay, nobody ever told me anything. Now, there are some times when some people give you hints or they drop clues because they are either nervous or they don't think that it's significant to keep their mouth shut at that time. Okay, so when you are a targeted individual, it is very important that you keep your mind still and you become very much aware of what is around you. Okay, that means when you're having conversations with people, listen to what they say and listen to what they don't say. Okay, and I know, now what I'm talking about that is that I understood, like when I was working at BT Trucking, that place, right? The minute I got there, it was like these guys were sitting at a desk. They used to meet in the break room, not the break room. It was like this room, I guess a meeting room, right? And because not everybody had their own individual offices or whatever at that time. So, I would come in, and the minute I met these people, it was like you could tell that something was up. It was the utter disrespect of, like, for example, people like whispering, talking, pointing, laughing, like the giving you the impression like I know something you don't know. Okay, it was very rude, but they don't think about how rude that they behave. They are very distasteful. But I kept thinking, okay, whatever. It made me uncomfortable. You know why? Because I want to be able to go into a workplace and start fresh, detached from whatever happened at Murray Family Farms. I don't need any. And so all of that does is tell me we're continuing our bullshit. We are continuing the harassment. I did not appreciate it. I don't want to be bothered with it. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who wants to go to work and do my job, and that's it. So I kept thinking, this is just getting tiring. However, when we moved back into the other office over off of, I forgot. It's over there where the 99-cent store used to be. I forgot the name of the street. Anyway, I liked working at that time. Why? Because it was, a decent position. Okay. I basically went to work and came home and, it was fine. It was when I started getting promoted is when I started to really resent it. And it was this, like I said, the pressure. Oh, if you care about your career, you do this, and this. My view about this whole idea is that, people need to be well suited for their career. Okay, if you're trying to think that my career is going to be more focus based or more directed, or I'm going to have more enthusiasm, or I'm going to have more focus, or whatever. If you think they were trying to like bend me or make me accept this whole uniform thing, okay? And like I said, from that point on, I honestly started hating the job. I hated it. It no longer meant anything to me. I was dead. I mean, like I was dead inside. I was showing up to work just to get my paycheck. I hated every minute being there. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is what I'm saying. And so their solution was to harass, blacklist me, mistreat me. But the fact is that no, I am not somebody who should be discarded. In fact, I'm supposed to be in some sort of other industry. Maybe I'm supposed to work in, some other type place. Like, for example, I had talked about Rhonda Van Tassel. Rhonda Van Tassel, I worked for her for a very short period of time. And Rhonda Van Tassel worked in the beauty industry. Okay, whether you want to think of it that way or not, women, white women who get tans, that's a form of cosmetic. It alters their look. Okay, people who get their, I don't know what other services Rhonda offers. I've seen billboards and stuff like that. Whatever, whether that be Botox or something else, that is a form of what? Enhancing. A lot of women want to remove their wrinkles, right? Because they want to have a youthful appearance, so they'll go ahead and pay for that. What is that? That is a beauty enhancer. Yes, Rhonda Van Tassel was somebody who was in the beauty industry, but when somebody who goes and buys maybe a tube of like $3 lipstick, somebody wants to sit here and jump down my throat about it. You see what I'm saying? When this beauty industry is it's a big industry, and many people participate in it, including a Mormon woman. She was a Mormon. Okay, so yet I got tagged by the LDS Church. See, this is what I'm saying. How is it that they didn't think about, well, wait a second, this person, or what about this person, or this situation? Is because they were completely focused on one person and not seeing the entire thing. Okay, so that was brainwashing in and of itself. But going back to people telling me, nobody told me anything. Like I said, I understand how these sort of operations work because I've studied this stuff. Okay, that's why. And so nobody can be blamed for, ever divulging that sort of information to me. But, I figured it out myself. You know what I mean? And now that I figured it out, I'm very angry. I'm angry because, I see through the lie, and I also see through the deception of and the mind control, like, of each person that I used to believe was my family member. You know what I mean? And I'm disturbed by it. You know what I mean? The family unit of the kids of 533 is now dissolved. I am not their family. They're not I don't recognize them as anything. I don't recognize, like, the Collins of anything. You know what makes me angry is, like, I'll see some of these readings on YouTube with these tarot readers, and they'll, like, and I know that how else are you going to refer to somebody other than your ex, or some, like, an ex, your ex, right? But see, it's like, I don't know why, but, like, because me and Bruce were together back in the 90s, and it's been so long, it's like I feel irritated. It irritates me to even have that conversation being brought up because it's over. You know what I mean? It's been over, and it angers me because that was irrelevant. How can I say it? To me, in my mind, those issues with Bruce have been irrelevant for over 30 something years. And for me to come to find out that he was a part of my life, tagging along, creating problems, and then, acting as if I'm supposed to bend to his will. And then he was, that the Masons here in the community were allowing him to have some sort of significant, participation in my life when this was so outright wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I would never have anything to do with Bruce as an adult. You know what I mean? And, I didn't even have any animosity towards him back in 2000. I think it was 2006 or 2007 when he got married. Hang on a second. I gotta get something to drink. I was at peace with it. All I really wanted to do in 2006, because I had separated from my husband at that time, or 2006 or 2000, I think it was 2006, okay? Because I moved into an apartment that was close to where Kmart used to be. And I moved into an apartment because, Joel and I were arguing a lot. He was very, short-tempered with my son. And it was like he was not really adjusting to the whole, living together with a kid, right? But other than that, Joel and I got along well. But, there were times when he would be like, throwing temper tantrums or whatever. And, the thing is that I got married late in life. And I resented being around this person all the time. right? Because, like I said, people can put pressure on you. I was dating Joel, and I remember, there were people at my work that would sit there and like hint, "Are you going to get married? Are you going to?" I'm like, you know what? You really need to mind your own business. You know what I mean? It's like, I understand people, people just need to stay out of people's business, okay? So anyway, we had to get married, and I ended up regretting it in a lot of ways. But in 2006, I moved into my own apartment, and I think that's when the year when Penny came over to my house, and Houston was going to go to Bruce's wedding, and I was fine with it. I not one time said, "Oh my God," or like me thinking I need to get him back. None of that. None of that ever happened. Okay. I was realizing, really, in 2006, I was realizing how comfortable I was not having to deal with anybody. This is the truth, okay? This is the truth, okay? I have been a solitary person my entire, pretty much, in all my incarnations. So I know what people always think. They always think, oh, Maria's lonely because she doesn't have a guy, blah, 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 blah. I understand it's easy to hook up with people, and it's easy to bring drama into your life if you don't want it, okay? So I don't need to be with a man. And I get really irritated when people assume that. This is one of the things that really upset me when I was dealing with my targeting, because, people were constantly talking, and running their mouths about this issue. I don't need a man to be happy. I don't. You know what I mean? I'm a loner, and I am a comfortable loner. I really am, okay? So some people would say, well, what is it with Vladimir Putin? I feel a magnetic draw towards Vladimir Putin, okay? And this is how I work with and operate all the way around. Like, I don't want to be just anybody's friend. I must have some sort of magnetic draw to you if I'm pursuing you in any way. And it seems to have been that way all my life. You know what I mean? Because I'm very leery of people. I'm not always comfortable with people. I don't always agree with people. And even though I don't always agree with people, that doesn't mean that I dislike them or hate them. It just, I understand what works and what doesn't work. Okay? And it really is that simple. Okay? So going back to people telling me or any or things like that, nobody told me anything. But here's what made me understand that this was going on beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay? I understood after leaving Murray Family Farms, whether it was Steve Murray himself or the people who were part of this network were targeting me. Okay, the confidentiality agreement with Steve Murray and I was not upheld in some ways. Okay, in a lot of ways, he was supposed to be the one that was supposed to uphold it. Okay, so I was supposed to be able to go out and be able to find a job, and that issue at Murray Family Farms was to never be brought up ever. Okay, for his protection and for mine. That was never supposed to be discussed, okay? Yet everything that happened over there was all over this community, okay? And I was being persecuted for it, okay? And so this is when I realized I'm being trafficked. Then I realized that not only was I being trafficked, I was being blacklisted, not just in California, but in other states as well, okay? And then this is when I started to panic, because I knew that I was right. I knew I had every right to mention this issue. I had every right to talk about it, really. The reason why I say this is because at 2015, when I realized that people were targeting me for this issue, that's when I said, I don't care if I sign the confidentiality contract. I need to say something, because what's going on is illegal, and it is very dangerous. And if this continues to go on, it could have serious consequences. That is why, because employment laws are here for a reason. Blacklisting is illegal for a reason. When somebody tells you that something is supposed to be confidential, it is supposed to be confidential for a reason. You know why? Because it can create this sort of toxicity. That's why. That is exactly why. Okay? So I was dealing with something that I knew was unfair. Okay, I was not comfortable working with people like Jackie. Like I talked to Jackie about my gang stalking. I talked to her about it. She was sitting here looking at me. She knew good and well she was a part of the operation, right? And you know what I didn't like about her is the fact that she was siding with that. And I kept thinking, this is a very serious issue, should never be played with. It should never be played with, disregarded, or anything, right? So her commitment to keeping this secret confirmed my suspicion that this must be a very serious, deep operation at some sort of deep level, CIA level, okay? And the CIA Okay. Like I said, has worked through churches mainly so that they can get information from people. The message I'm getting right now is that it is a matter of morals to assist me, meaning like everybody knows I'm not responsible for any of this. I'm not responsible for any of it. Okay. And it was wrong to begin with. But no one, I understand how covert operations work. I have always had interest in bizarre studies, and my interest, comes from Stevie Berganza. I see that, you know what I mean? This is why, when I was younger, I had an interest in Nazis and all that stuff, because this is just me picking up where I left off. That's it. You know what I mean? And so how things are right now is like, I feel like most of the time, and there is no picture in this video. I'm laying here in bed, and I'm sitting here talking in my cell phone, but I'm doing a lot of thinking because, this issue has made me see people for who they are, and once you see that, I'm on a very spiritual journey, and this is why the Swan Song Manifesto is so important to me, because it's what I see in people. You know what I mean? And what people's participation in this means, it's deeper than just brainwashing. You know what I mean? It opened my eyes to the fact, I am comfortable with who I am. I'm totally comfortable with who I am. Okay, you have to understand that how I see people, for even being a part of this, I could never want or desire friendship from people who could be like that. Right? The message I'm getting right now is that yes, there are angels up in those clouds. Yeah, there are. There's a lot of people who ended up dying, and like I said, this is the reason why I wanted this covert operation to stop. This is the reason why I looked at when Jackie was acting like she didn't know what I was talking about, and how, I really did not want to hate Jackie, but the fact of the matter is, I hate anybody who frivolizes my safety. Okay? I don't appreciate anybody who's going to sit here and jeopardize my life. Okay, I don't appreciate anybody after I have defined who my enemies were. I had basically already told people how I was mistreated by the Collins family, specifically Bruce. Okay, but the community continued to assist this person. Why would I want to be your friend? Why would I want to be your friend? Why? I don't. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you can't be peaceful. Okay, and this is what I am. I'm peaceful, and I'm polite, and I'm professional. Okay, then this is how people are supposed to be at all times in their job. Okay, and there might be people that come into your workplace that you don't like. Like, for example, when I was younger, there would be rich people. I mean, people who, literally went from one town to another just so they can shop. You know what I mean? Just so they could shop, And so sometimes people would roll their eyes at these frequent customers because, they, in their mind, they're thinking, it must be nice to be able to buy, luxury pieces of jewelry or whatever. And so sometimes they would be rude to these people that would come into the store because they secretly harbored a desire to live as these people. So they just naturally came off as rude. You know what I mean? Not everybody is able to work among people who are high class. This is something I've noticed when I was younger, right? They would be very rude to these people. I myself was never rude to these people because I understood the more they bought, because I used to work on commission at some jobs, and I remember the more that nicer you were, the more you're going to get from them, right? So, and I'm not rich, okay, but I know that there were people in this community, right, who thought that I was. And this must have been like when I worked at BT Trucking or whatever. But, just because I had money didn't mean that I was happy. I was absolutely miserable. You know what I mean? But my point is that, the thing is that no matter how, or what people have, in order for people to be professional, they need to know, hey, you don't bring your personal problems, you don't inflict your frustrations out on customers or coworkers or your family or whatever. If you're dissatisfied with your life, you have to be able to try to fix it. You know what I mean? Or find solutions to either get what you want, or whatever without trying to inflict harm on other people. And what I saw was the immature behavior of people. How in the world could I want to be friends with people I absolutely have nothing but disgust and disdain for? It is what it is. You know what I mean? Because that was inappropriate. You don't do that, you know what I mean? And normalize it. So it makes me wonder, you know, it makes me wonder why, you know, I ever cared about these kids of 533. And the reason why is because I did when I was younger, because I did naturally. You know what I mean? And like I said, as an adult, I realized you cannot care about everybody. You cannot love everybody. Not everybody is worthy of love. And as an adult, I choose to use my discretion. Who do I want to show my affection to? Who do I want to pour myself into, or give my affection to, or give my attention to, or, you know, pray for, or want to feel like I want to protect them in some way? You can waste your energy on a lot of people. Not everybody is worth it. Okay, that doesn't mean that I go around wishing people ill or anything like that. But like I said, there are some people who have disrespected me to the point where I don't care about anything that they ever do, and nor will I ever, you know, and rightfully so, right? So the message I'm getting right now is that my main perps, they have been defeated. And the sad part is like, I never wanted to play this argument. Seriously, I never did. Really, I mean, let's just say, for example, I would have continued to see Bruce the same way I did back in 2006. Indifferent. Like, you know, he's married to Sarah. He's just minding his own business or whatever, okay? And I would have preferred everything just ended that way. I would have preferred everything have ended on the note that my mom was my mother and that Lisa was, you know, just a bratty sister or whatever. I now come to understand that these people were pathological and they were sick. They were disturbed. Okay, and why were they disturbed? Number one, the whole issue of putting me in that family in the first place, the deception. See, I remember having conversations with my mom about adoption when I was a kid, right? And I remember her telling me that it was the most proper thing to do to let that kid know who their parents were, right? Or let them know that they were adopted. See, but you know, the weird part is my mom never felt compelled to tell me the truth. And I all of these things like come up to me and make and come up to my mind to remember things, right? And the reason why is because I need justice. And so because I'm never going to get justice from anybody, because all of these people are nothing but cowards. They're nothing but cowards. Okay? They're willing to participate in this sort of stuff, but they will never man up to what they've done. Okay, nor do I want to see them. I don't ever want to see them. It would be a very disturbing thing for me to have to see these people. Okay, but it's the fact that, you know, my mom is a good example of what they would call a multiple type personality disorders, to where she could have one strong conviction. Oh, she truly does believe that it's important for people to know who they are and if they're adopted. But on the other side, somehow it's okay for her to keep this secret from me. The message I'm getting right now is that people do recognize my research in sociology, psychology, and law. People look at me as rather nerdy. But yeah, this is how I am. You know what I mean? I could, like I said, I could easily work for the FBI. Easily. You know what I mean? Because I'm somebody, I can gather information all I want to. If that's, I could do that. You know what I mean? And the thing is, all the information that I would gather, I would never once think of telling anybody. Except for the people who needed to know, the designated people. You know what I mean? Not to say that I want to work for the FBI. I'm just telling people that I understand that the importance of confidentiality. I do understand it. Okay, and so this is why, like, when I remember I was getting gang stalked and I started realizing that the people from Facebook were a part of it, I kept thinking, okay, I was tapping into some of the things that they were thinking, right? Like, why would you do this? And in their mind, it was like, this is realistic. It's realistic. This is what we do. Like, how dare you think that people would actually keep, you know, files confidential or whatever? Okay, but now you understand what happens when you don't. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that my path is open for peace. That's wonderful. And I should be grateful for this. You know, it's like, how long does a person have to sit here and advocate for themselves? How long does a person have to sit here and make videos? I've been making videos for 10 years. Okay. And then I've also been, you know, giving good proof of what I went through, giving good, proof to the people who were targeting me that they don't have any reason to do this, but they continue to do this. You know what I mean? So this was serious, deep, deep, deep mind control. You know what I mean? Because why didn't somebody sit there and say, hey, she's got a point there? Why didn't people, sit there and turn it around to the main perpetrator and ask these sort of questions? Why didn't they? Why didn't they? And the reason why is because, they were probably a part of the network that was socially protected, meaning I know in gang stalking, they usually do give people incentives. Sometimes they give people gift cards. They might have given people opportunities like job opportunities or whatever to try to stamp me out, to try to bully me or whatever, to one-up me or whatever. I never one-up these people. I knew that some of these people that I grew up in school with, I knew like one girl was a lawyer or whatever. It never like occurred to me to sabotage her or mess with her job or any of that sort of stuff. I realize, okay, this is life. Some people have things better than other people. Okay, but I will say, when it comes to me, I know that I deserve more. You know why? Because I've always stayed in my own lane. I've never done anything to hurt anybody. But all of these people that I used to know were nothing but wicked. They were nothing but wicked. Okay, and I look back at these people and I think, okay, what is it that I liked about some of these people? And the things that I liked about them were all superficial. I might have liked the sweaters that they wore, or I might have liked the way that they did their hair back in high school, or maybe I thought that they had cool style or whatever. But when I dissect the nature of these people, they were all wicked. They were all wicked. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that okay, good. People do recognize my angelic DNA. And so this is what it is. I had to figure all this out by myself. Nobody told me anything. Nobody did. Okay. Like I said, there were times where people kind of slipped up and kind of let me know that this was an issue relating to another work issue. Okay. That make the Murray Valley Farms thing, or maybe they knew me from another job or whatever. But no, I had to figure it all out myself. And it wasn't difficult. It was just, I think it was me trying to understand how deep the level was. Because, there are different levels of this, okay? There's levels of where maybe employer might have been, mad at you, so they retaliated, right? And blacklisted you within your community, right? But see, I realized I was blacklisted throughout the United States, and then this was going on in social media and everything else, okay? So this is when I realized, okay, this is high level targeting. And this is something I did not want to have to admit to myself. I did not want to admit to myself that it was possibly CIA level. The CIA, you were in the wrong. I'm sorry, but you were. You are in the wrong, okay, completely. I've never been somebody who wanted to create some sort of stir or caused anybody problems or, I don't want to do any of that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? I find life very torturous and burdensome. And I would have to say, unfortunately, there are groups that, you have, worked alongside, like the LDS Church, that is what causes people these sort of sufferings, and really, if these sort of groups didn't exist, the world would be a better place. It really would. So I suggest you reform your operations. That would be a good idea. Focus on, pursuing things. And I'm of course actually referring to the CIA of the 50-something years ago. But I do understand that some people have reignited this interest, possibly within the CIA level, as well as, we know the LDS Church was involved and everything else like that. The thing is, you guys need to redirect your focus. You know what I mean? I do understand that the CIA is a part of an actual functioning intelligence group. It is an actual group, okay? Like it's a functional organization. It's just that sometimes you do stuff that's just off the cuff, and that's what you should not be doing, okay? I do know that you have an interest in my DNA. I'm not a threat to society. In fact, I'm somebody who is a peace bringer, and that's all I've ever done. I only care about peace. I only care about peace. I do know that you understand that it is employment law that is supposed to be upheld and honored. And I do know that what goes on in this country with a lot of people, resorting to I'm saying religion, they don't really have any specific backing for their religious. It could be somebody with low self-esteem who just feels jealous and wants to make a religious justification out of it. That's not my problem. And people need to understand how to get in touch with themselves, how to feel good about themselves, how to deal with self-improvement instead of inflicting their pain out on other people. I'm not responsible for other people's problems. People can look at me as a burden baby. I am only a burden baby in church lore. Do you understand? I'm only a burden baby in church lore, meaning that on legal terms, I have the rights and everything else. I'm a human being, okay? And what goes on in church, United States is not run by so-called Christian principles, and it's this sort of brainwashing is what people think they can bring their religious crap into the workplace and wreak havoc. Okay, so I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Okay, so all peace with the CIA. Okay, I understand you've got work to do. I hope I redirected your shift and your energy and your focus onto doing things that you're supposed to do, like protecting the United States from things like this. Okay, is what you're really supposed to be doing. Okay, I do recognize that I am. The message I'm getting right now is all credit to me. Yes, everyone is mind controlled from MK Ultra programs. Absolutely. I bet you members of the CIA are probably brainwashed. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's like the level of mind control that they did on people is just it's a lot. It's a lot. It's like layers upon layers. It's weird because I remember reading about mind control, and then I'm sitting here I remember telling my sister the thing, Lisa, about what I read, and then her getting angry. Did she realize at that moment that she was one of these people? That she was what do you call it? That she was I don't know, an operative or something. It's so deep. It's so deep. My mind is blown. My mind is very blown. Okay, because I've never caused any ruckus. I've never, I'm somebody who's only cared about peace. But what I think maybe some people might have been bothered by is the fact that, like for example, the LDS Church probably resented me because of my spirituality and the fact that I never endorsed Mormonism. But you got to understand, why would I? I mean, I understand that maybe Mormonism may have the spiritual significance to people within their group, like people in Utah or whatever. It might, or people who are raised. I've never contested the fact that some people might be happy, content in their Mormon lives. Okay, but all peace to you. You have the right to practice your religion, as I have the right to practice mine. Okay, and I know we go back in history. Obviously, we do go back in history. The LDS Church and me. Because of my existence as CB Berganza. But I honestly, no offense to the Mormons, okay? At this point, I really do want peace. It's just that we don't agree on things, and we just need to leave it at that. We don't agree on things, and we need to leave it at that. And I don't ever want to have to reflect on this issue again. I feel as though the infiltration of this program and the constant mind control techniques that are trying to or being directed towards me, I find it offensive because there is nothing in your world that I admire. There's nothing in your world that I want or care about. You know what I mean? Like, what these people are trying to set me up for, to compete against, like, especially people like Bruce Collins or whatever. Like, I'm not into it. I don't care about. I've always been on the alternative track, and this is what fuels me. This is what I'm interested in. And I think people were assuming that I wanted what maybe like the girl over at I don't know, just all the people that I worked with. Maybe they were wanting a certain way of life, and they were focusing on that. I've never been, and I know that they persecuted me because I'm different than they are. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? But they don't have the right to do what they did. What I experienced was an outright hate crime, period. Okay. And I'm glad that as of the 29th of December, apparently there is peace with the LDS Church and in Bakersfield. I'm glad. And that I define what divinity is, and all the leaders, political as well as the religious, do recognize that. You know? So, anyway, I just want to come on here and make this video and let people know, no, nobody told me anything. My son has never told me anything. In fact, he doesn't want to talk about anything at all when it relates to this. I do know that these sort of programs cause mental problems, and they do definitely cause division. I do resent the people who wanted to bring my son involved in this, mainly because your family structure is supposed to be your rock. It's supposed to be your foundation, and you are trying to corrupt and defile my family, and I do not appreciate it. In fact, you need to understand why these programs are wrong and why they're unnecessary. Okay, this is these sort of issues that cause more problems and division on the earth than actually creates any kind of peace. And it's wrong, okay? And the bullying and all of that other stuff, I'm just beside myself with the disgust and the disturbance. It's unfortunate that some people thought that I was supposed to be bullied or that I didn't have the right to be a part of society, when in fact, I would say that I'm somebody who exemplifies a peaceful person, as well as somebody who is good for humanity. The planets are just stars above the regions of origins. And yes, it's agreed that it is employment law that must be followed. Religion has no place in the workplace. I'm glad that Vladimir Putin associates music for his feelings with me. That's nice. That's very sweet. There was actually a couple of songs I heard while I was thinking of him. I was going to put it in the newsletter, but then I kept thinking, I really don't need to be sappy about this. But anyway, I do think that Vladimir Putin, to me, is somebody that I do care about. I don't ever want him to feel any sort of discomfort. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I'm going to be back with another video sometime later. Take care. Bye.